Have heard about Roswell, the great conspiracy theory about UFOs crashing in the deserts of New Mexico. Well, Australia has its own UFO mystery as well. This goes back more than 40 years, witnessed by 200 people who say it was kept secret by the military. As Brian Seymour reports, more light is now being shone on Australia's Westall incident.
This boy come running in and saying, Mr. Greenwood, there's these things in the sky, these things in the sky.
We looked up and we just saw this saucer type thing taking off.
It wasn't a plane, it wasn't a balloon, it was nothing like that.
A lot of the kids took off towards where it seemed to go.
All the students were just running all over the place, hysterical.
Westall High School as a teaching situation ceased.
My girlfriend and I sat on the fence, climbed the fence, the school boundary, and we were crying, thinking it was the end of the world.
For 44 years, the story of what happened at Westall has been largely untold or covered up.
That afternoon, our principal called a special assembly and told us all not to talk about it.
I was prepped to tell the students that what they'd seen didn't exist.
We were told that we weren't allowed to speak to the media.
You've most likely heard about the best-known UFO encounter that occurred at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. But the fifth greatest UFO mystery on the planet happened a world away, just southeast of Melbourne, in the suburb of Clayton South. It happened at Westall High School on Wednesday, April 6, 1966. Recess time about 11 o'clock in the morning. Scientists and UFO experts have long known about the Aussie sighting, but until now the details have been locked in our past.
All I knew was what I saw, and it definitely was not any aircraft of the day by any stretch of the imagination, and it certainly was not a weather balloon.
It still would take me to my grave. What the hell was that?
It was amazing, and something that I've never forgotten.
Victor Sukrusny was in second form when he says he had a very close encounter. After watching with over 150 other children a mysterious saucer-shaped craft land, he decided to approach it.
You could feel heat about a metre away coming from. It was pretty warm or hot, and then it just gradually lifted up and then went off towards the pines.
We're talking about 200 people, and a lot of them were kids too. They were at school, so I mean, I think adults have got preconceptions about what a UFO might or may not be, but kids are a different matter, and yeah, when you've got 200 witnesses, either there was something strange in the tuck shop lunch that day, or there was something else going on.
A news crew interviewed several students at the school right after the event, so filmmaker Shane Ryan tracked down the tape.
But oddly, there was nothing there. I was absolutely devastated, and nobody had any idea where it had gone.
A teacher saw one of his colleagues who had taken pictures confronted by a man in a dark blue suit.
It was demanded that she hand over not the film, but the entire camera.
However, one written account survives in the Dandenong Journal newspaper, which reported the occurrence, questioned the involvement of the military and the cover-up by school officials.
It would be that someone either from the police or the military would come forward and say, yes, they were there.
Some of the surviving witnesses are appealing for those with official information to come forward. Incredibly, and despite the involvement of the Army, Air Force and police, there is not one single mention of the Westall incident in government files.
You asked me whether an R&D establishment would destroy evidence. Yes, of course they would.
Shane Ryan has an obsession with what occurred at Westall. He's pieced together what is known and recorded scores of interviews with those school children who are all now in their 50s and 60s.
I looked up and I was facing the object in the sky, and I just thought, oh, somebody's got some way of projecting a film of something into the sky. I didn't believe that it was really happening. But my boss turned around and he saw it, and we stood there looking at it for several minutes. They crossed and walked down here to this corner. After a while, trucks turned up with, it looked like army trucks.
I was called down to the headmaster's office, and there were two men in the headmaster's office, very well-dressed gentlemen in suits. They weren't introduced to me in person, and I don't know where they came from. From my references now as an adult, I would say they were Asia. Then we went into, oh, and we suppose you think you saw a flying saucer. And I'm like, well, I didn't say that. I said I saw an object, and we suppose you saw little green men. When I came out, I think I burst into tears. They were certainly Australian government, and I think it was part of their job to keep everything quiet.
The authorities had found a way to silence the children, but they still had unfinished business with the teacher, Andrew Greenwood. He told me that 2 officers came to his home and threatened him under the Official Secrets Act. They said that he couldn't have seen a flying saucer at Westall because there were no such things as flying saucers. They threatened to tell people he was alcoholic, even though he wasn't.
It was their job to squash what was being seen. It was a bunch of kids that saw this, so we would be able to squash this down.
My name's Blake Cousins, and we're here with Alex Player, known as the Polished Knob, right out of Australia. He's an amazing phenom right here on YouTube in regards to alien sightings. In his backyard, he is capturing some amazing footage of alien beings visiting him and his mother in Australia. Alex, thanks for joining us again at Third Phase of Moon. Can you tell us the history of what you've been shooting in your backyard and when it got started?
It all started in October 2010, and that's for the first time I saw anything. And it's been continually happening every 2-3 weeks. Sometimes it's been one time it was 2 days apart. Other times it's been months apart. For the last, well, until now, up until I think about a month ago, 3 weeks ago.
Hey, can you tell us here at Third Phase of Moon and our viewers if these beings are malicious in any way? Are you scared of them, or how are they reacting to this encounter with you and your mother?
See, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what they're thinking or what they're doing. I mean, you can't treat them like something like an animal that you know what they're going to do, their instincts, because no one knows what they're going to do, anything about them. They've only been aggressive if I've come too close. That's the only thing I've found to be aggressive, is if I was too close. If when I've walked into the grass and they've been there, that's the only time I've found it.
Alright, Alex, I want to ask you about these encounters. At points you are screaming and actually have a lot of vulgar language, I'd have to say. What is it in regards to when you're encountering these and you're acting in this kind of manner? You say it, Blake?
It's just what comes natural to me. I'm just doing and acting the way I naturally do. I mean, I try, as of late, I'm trying to keep it down a bit and stop scaring it away and, screaming at it pretty much. Whether it can tell that, I mean, I don't think it understands maybe what I'm saying, but on the other hand, they're probably a lot smarter than us and they do understand what I'm saying. So I try to keep it down and not swear so much.
Can you tell us, Alex, what was the most shocking or most relevant part that you knew at that moment that what was happening was not normal?
Definitely when I got pulled through the grass. I had absolutely no control over anything. Like, I'm just being pulled, you know what I mean? And it was just like I was like on a slide, just sliding, you know what I mean? Yeah, that was probably the most I've been scared ever in my whole life. As I was being pulled away, I was in the grass and I stopped moving, I stood up, and then I saw it come towards me through the grass, and I kind of, I kind of pushed it off type of thing, if you know what I mean, and as that happened, it grabbed my shirt. As you see, I run out of the grass, my shirt ripped.
Holy shit!
He is an eminent psychiatrist, and he has been cited on numerous occasions for his scholarship. He's even won the Pulitzer Prize. His recent work with people who believe that they've been abducted by aliens has even caught the attention of the respected New York Times. For the last 4 years, Dr. Mack has studied about 100 patients who claim they have been abducted by aliens. He believes them when they say aliens have inserted foreign objects into their bodies. He believes them when they say that they have been on the alien spaceships. And Dr. Mack believes them, he says, when they say that they have had children with aliens. Later in this program today, we're going to hear from a doctor who says that many people fabricate alien abduction stories to explain other problems in their life. But Dr. Mack says that he has tested these abductees and can find no evidence of any kind of mental instability. He's even had other doctors examine them who also found all of our guests today to be perfectly sane. As you'll soon see, his patients do come across as being really quite normal, just like you and me, and responsible. This is Peter Faust. He is one of Dr. Mack's patients who was profiled in his new book. Dr. Mack's new book is called Abduction. Peter, who has worked as a chef, as a hotel manager, and as a therapist, says that he was first visited by aliens when he was 8 years old. He continues to have encounters as an adult, and yes, he believes that beings from other planets have been intimate with him. So, despite the fact that they have been scared out of their minds, Peter and others we're going to hear from today say that their lessons from the aliens have enriched their lives in ways that they would like to share with us. And that is what we're here to hear from you. You know how crazy it sounds. I said to you as we started the show, this is really either pretty brave of you or it's one of the great publicity stunts of our time. Because to go on television and to admit that you have been abducted in a world where people don't even, most people, I think, don't accept that as a part of reality or possible reality, puts you in a pretty good position to be ridiculed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so are you scared about that? Are you...
I used to be scared about it, but it's really important now to talk about it because I realize there's lots of people out there like myself who a few years ago had these experiences and didn't know what to do with them.
Yes, but what I want to hear from you, or I'm trying to hear from you, is whether or not you understand how crazy it sounds to us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I had to deal with my own craziness and to think it was crazy for me to think this before I could talk to other people about it.
So when it first happened to you, is it something that you absolutely were sure of, or did it feel like a dream, or did you, what?
I wasn't sure. I had a conscious memory. I knew something happened in the middle of the night that I couldn't explain, that nowhere in my imagination could I have made this up. And I just sat with that for a long time.
You say in, or you were quoted in Dr. Mack's book, I remember, as saying that you always did believe somehow in guardian angels, that as a child you thought they were just guardian angels, and that you always believed that you had some way of talking to God. That's what, as I remember the quote. That's not exactly the quote, but something like that. So do you remember when you were 8 years old being abducted, or when you were younger feeling this whatever?
No, I had memories when I was an adult, 3 or 4 years ago. And then in regression is when I went back in time, saw myself as a child having the abductions from the time I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
So more and more came out under regression.
Okay, can you tell me what you remembered when you were regressed?
I remember a light hitting me in the forehead, aliens in my room, being lifted up into a spaceship.
What they look like? They look like they did in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
No.
No?
Similar, but not quite the same. Not at all.
Okay.
I remember lying on a table, lying naked, having probes put around me, experiments done on me, looking in my eyes, my ears, around my body.
So this happened to you, what, in the middle of the day, or you...
They happen at nighttime.
Okay, so when you're sleeping? Or not sleeping?
What happened was, for me, the conscious memories that I had was, in the middle of the night, I woke up, very conscious, walked over to my living room, saw something in the room, felt the white light, felt the paralysis, and then I fell asleep. Several hours later, I woke up and had these intense emotions associated with the experience that just, I couldn't fathom. Like, why was I so scared? Why was I terrified? What was...
You had a bad dream.
That's what I thought. That's what I wanted to believe. That's what I wanted to believe for years. And I think that's what most people want to believe. Until...
And why do you want to believe that? Because
I don't want to think I'm abducted by aliens. That was the last thing I wanted in my life.
This sounds like a bad tabloid story.
That's what it sounded like to me for a long time.
But Dr. Mack tape-recorded several of his therapy sessions with Peter, including one where Peter was under hypnosis. And during these sessions, Peter recalled his meetings with the aliens. We have a tape made by a Canadian film crew that shows the very first time Peter ever heard himself under hypnosis. So you will see Peter's reaction listening to the tape. You can hear Peter's voice describing on the tape what the aliens did to him, and you can see his reaction to hearing his own words. It's about 42 seconds. Take a look.
He lifted me up. I'm in my room in Hawaii. And they lifted me up. Up there. And I'm terrified. I can't move. And now we're going outside. You're terrified. Ended like this. They got me.
Peter, just remember, you're going to be okay. Just go, let it go. Let the feelings come. You're going to come through this fine. You're going to be just fine.
What was that like to hear it? What's it like to hear it now?
It's easier now because I've heard it so many times, but it still brings up emotions. And that's what made me believe that something happened, because I couldn't deny my emotions.
I heard your own father didn't believe you until he heard the tape. Now, that is sort of what we call one of those blood-curdling screams. That's, you know?
Well, it's not that my father didn't believe me, but it's just to hear the story. It's hard to fathom. It's hard to accept. But when he saw the tape and heard the emotions associated with it, he knew there was something there. And for myself, I knew there was something real there.
Dr. Mack, what does this all mean? What is all of this, you know, the book where you talk to hundreds of patients and describe in detail what they say they have experienced, you with your credentials coming from Harvard, what do you think this all means?
Well, let me explain first why I concluded this is not psychiatric, why these people are not psychiatrically disturbed. Because I was concerned, when I first heard about this, I thought this must be madness. But when I heard that hundreds of thousands of people all over the country,
why not just
because these people, like Peter, I can't tell you how difficult it is to get people to go on television to talk about this. People are not interested in being before the public. They're very ashamed because they get ridiculed, humiliated about it. This is not something anybody does. This is not a club anybody wants to belong to. This is not something people do because they want to be filmed or get on publicity. It's very difficult to get people to come forth and acknowledge they've had these experiences.
Yes, and I've read interviews with people who have come forward years ago who wish that they hadn't at this point. Go ahead.
So when I heard of it, hundreds of thousands of people all over the country, from various polls, we know maybe even millions of people have had very similar experiences. They don't know each other. The details that they're describing were not in the media. They have nothing to gain by it. They feel ashamed about it. That's number one. When I also heard that this was occurring in children as young as 2 or 3 years old, that ruled out personality explanations. It's associated with UFOs independently observed by witnesses, by media, by neighbors. It's also associated with physical findings and, as said before, that people, when examined, are not psychiatrically disturbed. So the only thing that behaves like that is real experience.
Yeah, you say that it's trauma, that it's trauma.
It's traumatic. Real experiences are the only thing that occurs like that. Psychosis isn't like that. Madness is not like that. Dreams are not like that. Fantasy is not like that. Now, if these are real experiences, what is going on?
Okay, we sent a camera crew to see how Peter lives.
I live in Boston now. Went to Penn State University, got a degree in education. After leaving college, I worked as a professional chef in large hotels. At one point, I moved to Hawaii, and where I met my wife. From working as a chef, I moved into hotel management, eventually living in the Caribbean, where my wife and I managed a small private hotel. I live in a typical two-family Boston suburb. I walk to work every day from my house. I'm licensed as a professional acupuncturist in the state of Massachusetts. How does that feel?
Fine.
Okay. I consider myself a typical 36-year-old guy who is trying to make a living like everyone else.
So we're talking today to people who say that they have been abducted by aliens, and the reason I agreed with the producers to do this show when the idea was first presented to me is they gave me Dr. Mack's book called Abduction, and Dr. Mack is a respected Harvard professor, and I would just like to know whether or not you, from the beginning, believed them.
No, when I first heard about this, I thought they must be mentally disturbed myself, but they're not. And this is what happened. There is not, of the thousands of cases reported, there is not a single abduction case that has turned out to reflect some other kind of problem, sexual abuse, some other kind of trauma. Every case has stood on its own merit. The reverse has been true, that cases that have been thought to be incest or sexual abuse, when examined, have turned out to be cases of alien abduction.
What is a typical alien abduction like, if there is a typical one?
Well, there is a pattern. What happens is the person is in their bedroom or a car, or in one case, a woman on a snowmobile, or a child in a schoolyard, and a powerful blue light or an energy comes along. Other people in the environment may be switched off, so they may witness, they may not witness what happens. The person is taken up on this blue light by some energy. The little beings are around with the big black eyes, and they're kind of small and thin, and they emanate a certain energy. They're taken up. They may see a spaceship, they may not. They may see their home recede. They're taken inside a kind of cool environment, bright light. They're taken into a room, put on a table. There is like a doctor, a head being, who is the person in charge of what's going on. They are then examined, stared at. These eyes are very powerful. Strong connection with the eyes is often made. Then certain kinds of probing goes on, and certain kinds of tissue samples are taken. Sometimes an implant is left. The people feel that they're being tracked by these implants, and then typically
Because you felt you had an implant, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sperm sample may be taken. Eggs are taken from women, reimplanted. They sometimes are taken to see hybrid babies, fetuses on the ships in abductions that occur later on. And there's a whole pattern which, after a while, begins to become clear. And as I said before, the details of this have not been in the media when this was first emerging through the pioneering work of Bud Hopkins and others.
Now, this is what I couldn't understand all through reading Abduction is, and in your story in particular, because you talked about how you felt, Peter, that you were surprised at some of the simplest tools that were so highly technologically advanced, things that we hadn't even thought of here. But you didn't say what those were. Things like what?
Things like being able to go up in the sinuses of my nose, up into my sinus cavities, going into my eyes, deep into my ears, things like that.
Well, this is what's fascinating to me. If they're so smart, why do they have to take us?
Well, one of the things is that we don't get very far is trying to guess alien psychology.
Yeah.
We don't even know why they're so fascinated. They're very interested in why we're so aggressive. They don't seem to understand this. Here we have this beautiful planet. We seem to be destroying it. They seem very puzzled by that.
Well, are they spiritual beings as you see it, or somewhere across between?
Well, we wanted to have it one way or the other. You know,
Yeah.
It's not so. It's like not that simple. But it's what seems to be the case is they come from some other domain, some place, maybe not another star or maybe from another dimension, but they manifest, they show up here in our physical world.
What do they say to you? What do you think they wanted with you?
They wanted connection. And they took me out of my environment, out of my reality, and it felt like I was so scared, so terrified, that once I got through the human emotions, then I could be there with them. And it always felt in every abduction that once I got through the terror, they wanted to make contact. They wanted me to look in their eyes. They wanted me to connect with them. They wanted me to somehow accept them. That's what kept
Why?
coming. Why not?
Well, why?
Because I believe that they're coming. I believe that somehow they're going to show up in our lifetime and that they're preparing us.
And what, they don't want us to be scared, or they want us to all get along, or what do you think?
You can pick any of the choices. Like John said, I don't know what their psychology is. I
Why,
don't know
why you? You had to ask yourself that question. Why you?
I still ask myself that question, and I think most of the other abductees do, too.
Which is interesting is the cross-section of people that are abducted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everybody from everywhere. Every walk of life.
Scientists, psychiatrists, diplomats, every type of person that you can imagine. And one of the things about almost every case, there's a great deal of information transmitted to the experiencers about the destruction of the Earth, what we're doing to the Earth's environment. There seems to be, whatever the source of these alien beings is, whoever their managers are, seems concerned that what we're doing to this incredibly beautiful planet. And they get images of the destruction that Peter's had, these Earth being destroyed, and that has a very powerful effect on the consciousness of the experiencers.
Did you get to see their planet?
No.
Did you get to see anything?
I certainly saw the inside of the ship, and I had a lot of visions of the Earth, like John said.
And so what was the message? After all is said and done, what is it you learned from the experience, if anything?
It really took me inside. It took me inside who I am and what my connections are with myself, and then what my connections are with the Earth and the people here, and then on a greater perspective, what my connections are in the universe, and that we're not alone in the universe, that there are extraterrestrials and they're coming, and that they've come, and that we somehow need to bridge that gap.
So did you look at E.T. differently than the rest of us?
I didn't. You have to remember, I only had these. I've only been conscious of these memories for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, since you regressed. Yeah.
Well, I've had the conscious memories, and then in the regressions, more and more memories came up.
What do you want us to know?
That it's not just traumatic. That although there is an aspect of it that is traumatic and emotional, that there's something good that comes out of it, and that there's a deeper connection, and there's an awareness that comes out of the experience for the abductees.
I wanted to ask you, why, if every other culture except this one in the history of the human race has believed there were other entities, other intelligences in the universe, why are we so goofy about this? Why do we treat people like they're crazy and humiliate them if they are experiencing some other entity, some other intelligence that's coming across? Why is everybody thought crazy if some intelligence is coming to them and they're honestly experiencing that this is the case?
Because we like living in a little box with a closed door on it. I think that's basically it.
You're absolutely right.
We're talking today with Harvard University psychiatrist John Mack, who studied the cases of about 100 people, at least, who claim that they've been abducted by aliens. One of Dr. Mack's patients, Randy here, says his abduction occurred while he was awake. He is here with his sister, Glinda, who says she too has been abducted since childhood. Since what age? Do you remember?
5.
5 years old. And at 5 years old, what happened? So, some of what Dr. Mack described earlier here?
Right. I had a I consciously remembered my experience when I was 5, but I had bits of it that were missing. And what I remember is that through my wall came some beings around my bed, and I ran between them and ran out of the room into my mother's room to hide from them. And what happened is they followed me in there, and that's the last I remember of it. However, it's interesting because after that, I never told anybody about that, and I just buried it in the back of my mind. And me and my brother, we never even spoke about it until the last few years.
Why, Randy?
I first told my mom and dad when I was 10 years old, something happened, and I told my mom and dad.
Do you remember when he told you? You're Randy's mom. What did he tell you? Stand up, please.
Back about a couple years ago, my daughter was living at a distance away from home, and she had picked up the book Communion, and she said it disturbed her. So I tried to get a connection.
Which daughter, Glinda?
Glindy. And so I read the book, and my son happened to walk in for dinner, and my husband and I were both there, and I said, "Geez, this is so stirring." And he said, "Well, don't you remember when I was 10 years old?" And it was like it was put way in the back of our mind. And we both said, "Oh, yeah." And we remember him coming up to our room.
And saying?
And saying there was a spaceship outside, and there were little guys around his bed, and they put the dog to sleep, which sounds bizarre. Now...
Oh, a little bit more than bizarre, yeah. Yeah.
But,
very bizarre. Yeah.
But, so my husband went outside.
So when he told you at 10, you said, "Yeah, right, honey?"
No. My husband went outside thinking it was probably an intruder. I settled, there wasn't an intruder, so we found. I settled him down for sleep, and we never thought another thing about it until...
There was or was not an intruder? I didn't hear you say.
There was not an
intruder. Was not an
intruder
intruder.
that we were aware of.
So you told him that...
So I'm sure
it's in his imagination.
I don't even remember telling him that.
What do you remember, Randy?
That's pretty much it. But I mean, I ran up to their room completely terrified because they had put me out for a little over an hour, and when I came to, you know, I ran out. First thing was I didn't know if I was going to get upstairs where my mom and dad's room where it was. I mean, it was that kind of fear, and yeah, I have a hard time with this.
Why?
Because I don't want to believe it. I really don't.
Why? Because I'm thinking I wouldn't mind it happening to me.
But yeah, that's what everybody says.
If it happens
That's
to you,
what
you
everybody
feel different.
says. But I mean, it's totally made me question what life's about, and it stirred my life up a lot. And
so when it happened at 10, you always believed profoundly.
No, I hoped there was something wrong, and I went through a lot of testing and things to find out whether something was wrong.
So that was the first time it happened. Times
time.
again, yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't find anything wrong.
Yeah. And so.
And then it was 1990 when they came again, and I was probably conscious for 5 seconds before they put me out.
So you were awake.
Yeah.
And what happened?
They came in. I don't know where they came from. I mean, they were there so fast.
Where were you?
I was just laying down on my bed. I just came down to my bedroom. I just laid down, and it was instantaneous. They were just there. And, wow. I just went into shock. I thought I was going to die. My life flashed before my eyes. And I remembered all the times that they had been there before to get me. And then they put me out, and I just remember bits and pieces of what occurred after that point, very fragmented. But what blows my mind is meeting other people that it's happened to. That's what blows my mind, because I talk to them, and they know what I'm talking about. They're describing the same things, and it just blows my mind. I wish this was not happening, but I am getting so much, what do you call it, evidence from talking to other people that this is not uncommon, and this is.
I know, but still, all of us watching and hearing you now are thinking, but where's the proof? It's just.
Right. I wish I had it.
It's you saying it. Why not take a picture of them? Why not bring?
I've tried. I'm pretty good with electronics, and I tried with cameras, motion sensor cameras, video cameras.
Tripwires.
Everything.
I'm going to use a quote question from Carl Sagan, who in his article arguing against this in, I think it was Parade magazine, asked the question, where is the physical evidence no abductee has taken an authentic photograph of the interior of the ship or come back with detailed scientific information unknown on Earth? These failures surely tell us something. What do you say to that, Dr. Mack?
First of all, there is physical evidence. The people have cuts, scoop marks, lesions on their bodies. They are witnessed to be absent by other people. I have a number of cases where people are just playing gone. A child comes into the mother's room. Mom, you weren't there during the night when I came. There is burned earth outside where the ships have landed. There is physical. It may not satisfy our criteria of proof, but proof may be something which only operates within the frame of evidence of this physical world in the box you mentioned before that we live in. This is what's going on here is something in some ways more subtle. In other words, something coming from another dimension into our world, which is very commonly experienced in other cultures, but not in this culture.
Because
we don't believe that.
We live in a box.
We live in a box, and we're trying. I think this phenomenon has a chance to break us out of that box that Carl Sagan would keep us in. In other words, this is an opportunity to experience ourselves as related beyond this reality that we're in now.
Well, this is Joe, who has told Dr. Mack that he's met aliens on the lawn of his home. Joe had a name for one of his alien captors. He called him what?
Tanoun.
Tanoun. Why?
Because that was the name that he gave me.
And this is Eva, who's felt the presence, she says, of aliens since she was a child. Most recently, she says it was yesterday when she was on her way to our studio. She says the visits make her happy, and she looks forward to them. How do you know that they're aliens and not just a little happy feeling coming to visit? Really, I asked that. In all seriousness.
Because I can sense them, and there is a difference between when I feel happy and when I feel they're around. And I think the reason for their appearance within our reality is to come out of the box. We need
is to help us to come out of the box.
Yes, we need to redefine our definition of reality. We tend to believe that what we feel or what we see or whatever we use our five senses with, that's reality, and anything beyond that is not. And they're here to tell us that there is a reality beyond that. And we need to redefine what reality is.
Yes, because I'm sure before the microscope was invented, when people were told that there were things beyond particles that you could not see with the human eye, nobody believed that either. And then the microscope was invented and people said, oh yeah, there they are. Yeah. Is that what you're describing here?
That's what I'm describing, and that's what they're doing, and they're really challenging us. And that's the purpose of it.
Do you feel challenged, or you feel somewhat of what Randy has expressed here, a sense of anxiety about it, that you wish it were not happening, or yours is different, you get a little happy feeling?
No, I got both. I have two kinds of experiences, one more on the physical level when they mess around with my body, and it's very traumatic, it's very painful, and throughout the experiences I am conscious sometimes, and I could feel the pain. And it's just awful, especially when you are frozen, you're paralyzed, you cannot move, you're in shock. But that is interconnected to a different kind of experience I have, which is with different beings who just take me elsewhere and they teach me.
Randy?
I guess it is traumatizing. I mean, I think we've all experienced the traumatization part.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I think as humans, we only have our physical nature and our emotional nature to judge if something's real.
Yeah.
So when you have the experience, you have a physical sensation, and then you have emotions associated with it. And that's what, for me, told me it was real, that I couldn't deny the experience. And I believe that's what many people experience, the physical and the emotional. Then you're left with, something happened, and I can't deny it.
Yeah, I want to back him up on that. And there's what really persuaded me that this was something extraordinarily important for these individuals, and as it's turning out for all of our world and all of us, is that these people were expressing with such intense feeling something that was so meaningful and powerful for them, with great fear, shaking of the body. And as a psychiatrist, there's nothing but real experience that is like that.
If this is true, then what does it mean for your life? Joe?
That it has changed my perspective of life dramatically. You mentioned the box, Oprah. I think we can all relate to living in a box when life presents us with situations that we might initially say, wait a minute, this is crazy. I mean, every one of us, what you've heard is we've all said the same thing. When the information, when we had the experience, first reaction is, this is nuts, this is crazy. And yet, I'm a psychotherapist. I've worked with people in many different situations, couples, families, people with terminal illness. And I recognize that for me to continue to deny my experience was to continue to stay in the box. And the reason we tend to stay in the box and not want to believe this is because we want to believe we have some measure of control over the world. And we don't. The reality of it is we don't. We don't know who's the next one in this room is going to die. One of us is going to die. My mother just died of cancer a couple of months ago. And as she neared the end of her life, she started slipping into the next world, and she saw loved ones there to meet her. She saw angels, and people around her are like, oh my God, wait a minute, this is crazy, because it was outside of the box. And what these ETs are doing is they're coming in and they're rattling the box, and they're saying, wake up. The world you live in is dying.
Maybe between 6 and 8, I would assume.
Okay. They were fairly intense, or?
Yeah, they were very close together as well.
Right, okay.
4 years ago, Kelly Carr was a mother and housewife with no interest in spaceships or aliens. Now she's using technology to reconstruct images of her own encounter.
It does give the idea of the lights there, but, you know, the brightness of the light, it gives a good impression, except that the colour doesn't seem right.
Kelly's account starts in August 1993.
My husband and I were driving up to my girlfriend's place in Monbulk, which is in the Dandenong Mountains. We were driving on Belgrave-Hallam Road, and it was just on dusk. I saw what I thought was round orange lights in the field. It looked unusual to me.
Later that night, retracing their route home, Kelly noticed something else unusual.
It's about a kilometre or so in front of us, about twice the height of the treetops. We could see this object, which at first I thought was a blimp. It had the shape of a blimp, but it was light. As we got closer to it, the light seemed to sort of separate, and it was actually these a row of round lights, and they were orange. It appeared like there was silhouettes standing in these round orange circles, like people, but you could only see the black outline. I just said to my husband, look, there's people in there. And the minute I said that, it shot off to the left of us. Within 1 or 2 seconds, it was gone completely. About a kilometre or two further down the road, as we kept driving, I came across at least what I thought was a screen or a wall of light across the road. And my heart started racing and the adrenaline was sort of pumping through my body, and I'm thinking, we've just seen us back down there, we're in for, you know, a close encounter. Then the next instant, nothing. We seem to have actually covered a fair distance that I don't even remember covering. It might have been possibly close to a kilometre that I don't remember actually travelling. There was no light. There was nothing blocking the road.
Kelly says it wasn't until weeks later she remembered actually getting out of the car that night.
And I saw that there was another car that had pulled up 100 metres down the road. Then I walked around the front of the car to where my husband was standing on the other side, and we started walking across the road together. As we were walking across the road, I looked down and I saw that the other people were getting out the car and starting to walk as well. So I was quite happy that there was other people there who were seeing the same thing that we were. And we walked up along here to where the fence is. Right out in front of us is this huge craft.
I was totally awestruck, you know, it was science fiction coming to life. There wasn't any fear then, it was just all total awe. We stood here, I guess side by side, my husband and I, for about 30 to 45 seconds. Then this tall, dark being just appeared in front of the craft, and he was followed by about another 7 or 8 that appeared straight behind him. I felt this energy go through me. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before in my life. It was like some sort of low-level frequency that came in waves, but it was so dense that I could actually physically feel it going through my body. And that feeling absolutely terrified me. It was like, I can't even explain the horror that I felt just feeling this. And I began screaming. The minute I did, the eyes on these things lit up and they came charging across the field.
Halfway across, they split up into 2 groups. Some headed off down there and the rest came directly towards us. I felt this blow to my stomach, and the next thing you know, I'm back here somewhere on the grass. It literally lifted me off of my feet. And I thought I was going to die. I thought if I don't get up now, I'm going to pass out and I'm going to die. I'm not going to come back to consciousness, you know. So I pulled myself up into a sitting position, and when I sat up, I couldn't see anything, and it was like there was just black in front of my eyes. I want you to try stretching it down a little bit as well.
Kelly is not the only one who saw these images that night. For the first time ever, independent witnesses have given the same account of a close encounter. Even though Kelly has never met Jane, Glenda and Bill from the other car she saw, she has seen the sketches they drew for UFO researchers.
They've drawn the same circles of light around the top of the craft with these blue lines coming down, ending in a semicircle on the ground. They've actually also drawn a tripod underneath, which was something I didn't see that night. It becomes very clear then that we were all looking at the same thing and that it wasn't your average saucer-shaped craft. And basically, the second party were able to draw sketches of the beings very similar to the ones that I had, and they're not your usual little grey things that are, you know, media propaganda. I found a small red-coloured equilateral triangle underneath my navel, which I guess in reality provoked only a minor curiosity at the time. It was oddly geometric, and I did wonder, you know, how something like that could get on me that looked like a burn without me feeling it.
At UFO conferences, where Kelly is now a keynote speaker, she adds strength to her own story by showing photographs of physical marks left on one of the other women.
We were all left with triangular marks under our navels, but the ones that were marks that were actually photographed, the first one came from Glenda, which is it's a series of 3 small red dots along the inner thigh, and both Jane and Glenda were marked with these dots. I wasn't. Glenda had a ligature mark around her ankle, which is quite severe bruising. It looked like she'd been strapped down to something.
UFO researchers have also reported finding physical traces of the site where all witnesses said the encounter happened, particularly in relation to where the craft landed.
Inside that semicircle was actually a triangular formation of 3 points spaced 6 metres apart, which correspond with the tripod that was drawn underneath the girl's craft.
To this day, Kelly still doesn't know exactly what happened to her that night.
Tried a little bit.
Her most vivid memory is the fear that she felt.
That's very good. It's finally come out to what I'm looking for. And I think a lot of people, you know, might have experienced the fear in a nightmare where you're being chased or something like that, and it's a terror that you feel that, you know, sometimes can wake you up or whatever, but it's absolutely horrifying when you're dreaming it. And that's exactly what I was feeling while I was totally awake. That sort of terror, actually having to feel it while you're conscious and physically awake and feel it as a reality, is like a living nightmare, like a nightmare who come to life.
I'm Daryl Sims, private investigator, licensed private investigator in the state of Texas, and I study the UFO phenomena. Our primary interest is the medical and scientific evidence of alleged human-alien contact. We're not UFO wackos trying to make people believe in flying saucers. No, I don't care what anybody believes in anything. It doesn't make any difference. How this all began for me is in 1952. I was approximately 4 years old and noticed something strange in my room. And I was stunned that it had large black eyes. They were perfectly round. As it moves toward me, something really strange happened. Instantly, I became paralyzed. I've never in my life experienced fear like that, of any kind. Them that hunted me and hunted my son. And I was content to leave the alien alone. In 1948, my events began. I was 4 years old. I was conscious during the events. I remember them. They happened. And I've been hunting him ever since I found out he got my son. You mess with me, I can forget it and forgive you. You mess with my kids, and I'll come after you. I don't care who you are. Just because you got a skinhead and black eyes doesn't mean that you get to abduct my kids. Forget that. So, different story. So anyway, I've written 2 books on the phenomenon. Alien Hunter, Evidence and Light, which is a handbook on how to find actual evidence and how I did find evidence, the implants and all kinds of neat things inside here. And then I later wrote a book on implants and exactly what we found there. So my events I can live with, not a problem. I'll get over it. I'll grow up. I'll quit whining. But when you come after my children, I will come after you with a vengeance. You leave my children alone. I have different approaches to the abduction phenomena. I used to be a police officer. Whenever I interview you, it's kind of harrowing. I put my cop hat on and it doesn't believe much of anything. You're going to have to convince me. When I put the medical science hat on, I pull out our cardiovascular surgeons and our other doctors and other professionals, talk to them, bring them in. It's a totally different deal, but it's all got to be proved medically and scientifically. I have alien DNA. I'll pay for your test if it turns out to be that, not you pay for it in advance. You know what I mean? So I like evidence. I love evidence. I was in the intelligence community for 2 years. Some people hold that against me. During the Vietnam War, I was in the Central Intelligence Agency for 2 years in covert operations, training junior officer trainees at Camp Perry, Virginia. We fly all over the world and do these presentations on medical and scientific evidence of alleged human alien contact. We've been all over TV. We just finished a wonderful shoot with A&E, with John Greenwald, and absolutely wonderful man to work with. Incredible stuff, people. I discovered fluorescence, the fingerprint that aliens leave on abductees. In 1992, I discovered the implant phenomena that happened to me when I was age 12 in 1960 because I was the recipient of it. So I was conscious during the event. I didn't discover it in the sense of I did some medical discovery. I simply was there. I remember what happened. So that's why I started looking for other people. Some people think that my background in the intelligence community, there are a couple of them, not many, think that that was probably all made up. I assure you, any documents that I have concerning the Central Intelligence Agency, if they were forged, if they are altered, if my DD Form 214 is altered in any way, it's a federal crime and I'll go to prison. Do you think I would be so stupid? I have a top secret clearance. It cost the government about $250,000 for that. So at least somebody had a little bit of confidence at one time in me. We did get crosswise before I left. I brought a congressional investigation against the Central Intelligence Agency. It is a matter of record. I didn't agree with some of the things that were going on, so I'm just Mr. Red, White, and Blue, and I don't care what color you are. It's got to be right, and when things are not right, I will blow that whistle. I am also a licensed private investigator in the state of Texas, and I wear a lot of hats. We received 2 medals for our work from 2 governments, Japan and Slovakia, both from museums, and we're very obviously proud of what we do. There is 4,500 cases of physical evidence in and about abductions and on the ground. That's for, I mean, everything. I don't mean somebody just had a crop circle. I mean actual evidence left as a result of these experiences. So what do I do different than other investigators? Well, as you can see, the little dinosaur there, the various different paleontologists or whoever they are digging around, they dug all around that dinosaur and missed him. It's kind of like the alien, isn't it? Everybody talks about it, but where's the beef? Where is the evidence? The fact is there's plenty of evidence, and you will see that in this presentation today, a lot more than you imagine. It's in the infrared, the ultraviolet, and even in the visible range, and it's also in X-ray. It's there, folks. You don't have to parrot and these ridiculous arguments about, well, I saw it in my mind. That's not good enough. That's not going to work. We need the evidence because there is plenty. These abductees are telling the truth. These contactees are having experiences. This is the United States at night. Does anybody think from space that they can't tell the lights are on? They know where you're at. In fact, they probably find the abductee with a neural print that's even genetic, in my opinion. There are all kinds of ideas of why are they here? What are they gonna do to us? Are they here to serve man? I don't think so, but it's funny to think about it. I just don't think they're here to barbecue us. There are other views too. They're not as pleasant. Again, I don't think this is the purpose. I think there's much more to this. I wouldn't wait for the alien to tell you the truth of why they are here, though. It's like a woman waiting for the perfect man. You may find it as an excellent weight-reducing program. I'm sorry. Maybe the aliens are looking for our deep-seated, great values that we have in ourselves, 10 years of college down the drain, I don't know. We do know some things. I know this. The many times abductees say one thing in their event and what we find in the event is vastly different than what they thought happened. In this case, the lady said, I was in the school of higher consciousness. Why do I not believe that? Because that's what really happened. And you get a better sense of it as she screams, telling you she's in the school of higher consciousness. Why do I not believe that story? It's not that they're lying, it's just sometimes they make mistakes. There is a screensaver memory these aliens use to encompass your thinking. They get right next to your face with a large black eye, and with that fast, you have a brand new memory. It's not really a memory, it's called recall. It's not a memory at all. It's not the truth. It's like a screensaver on your computer. It's not the big information in the hard drive. So why is the alien here? Is some of the stuff we're seeing that he says a Trojan horse? I think that it is. Now, do I know what all the answers to that? No, I do not. I wished I did. I just work here. Sometimes they say, well, you use hypnosis for memory recovery. Actually, we use a lot of techniques, most of which are conscious. We rarely use hypnosis unless the individual requests it and it's at the end of the event, and then I use that to verify weather reports and other data that they cannot possibly lie about. Some abductees get angry with the alien about their experiences. This is a picture of me right after my event. I wasn't happy at all. Some abductees have other plans for the alien. Some of them are better than this, and some of them are not. I'm just telling you what I find in these events. Some abductees want to go after them. I tell them, wear a helmet. Don't go out there and do anything stupid. This is more my view. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I mean, he's not hurt. I mean, we're not going to hurt him. You know, we don't want to do that. 45% of the cases we have, even worldwide, 45% of the 1,000 cases I have worldwide are Native American, Indian, Irish, Celtic. Phase 1, postulates. I have several postulates that have to be true. If these are not true, we're wasting our time here. These points are, I'm serious. These have to be true. Postulate number 1, if UFOs are real, then they must be real evidence that you can see, the average individual. The government has to be able to see it too. It can't be just you. Government's got to see it. They have to report it just like you do. Well, they won't. Yes, they will, and they do. Yes, they do. Pay attention. They will, and they do. Yes, a bunch of them keep it secret. That's all right, but it still comes out anyway through various different ways. If UFOs are not real, aliens are probably not real either. You got to get here somehow. Well, they got here in their mind. I doubt it. If you see a bus driving down the street, you probably assume there's a bus driver. In some cities, I wouldn't say there was. But you hope there's a driver and probably passengers. It's a normal thing to assume. If I see a UFO, I suspect somebody's in it. Maybe you. I mean, he's just a cosmic pizza man anyway. He's just picking up and delivering. Which one are you? Second postulate, if UFOs are real, then there actually may be occupants. I'm sure this is true. I really think this is so for a lot of reasons. If UFOs are real, somebody's driving the bus is what I'm saying. Third postulate, if UFOs and entities are real, then there probably are encounters that are taking place. In other words, if we're flying around here looking at the place, they're probably stopping in and checking on some folks. These are called abductees and contactees. These events are real. Now, what they report in those events may be skewed, but the fact is there is actual contact. These events are quite real. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me in trouble here. In real abduction events, out of 100 events, let's say you had 100 events in your life, 80% of them, most of the time, are going to be non-physical. There's no evidence of the other 80% of the time. 20% of the time, those events are just as real and have as much physical evidence as anything in the world. 80% of the time, a lot of this stuff is just happening. It doesn't mean the alien's not there, it doesn't mean, but you're not leaving the room. Everything's happening right there. Whatever it is he's doing, uploading, downloading, whatever he's doing, it's happening in that room. Most of these events are not 3D happening, they're going somewhere. 20% of them, there's good evidence that in fact that is true. Point number 4, and this is kind of an important thing too, it's one of my little points here, is from the intelligence and counterintelligence, I think that's what's going on with these events. And I think the alien understands this very well, and I think we're kind of the last ones to get it. I think the intelligence community gets it pretty well. They understand what intelligence and counterintelligence is, and that's what's going on. What do you think the term Star Wars means anyway? Oh, you thought that had to do with only nuclear weapons. Governments know this evidence. Not all of the governments, but certain portions of those governments. And of course, the big question to everybody, where do these guys come from? Is it the Pleiades? It must be there. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we need a diplomatic approach to it. Some people say so. I'm sure Microsoft will help us with that. Is this how the alien views our probes that we send up in space? You say, well, that's amusing. They think it's a UFO. But the fact is, Don Ecker produced this picture some time ago. This is the moon Phobos. And that's a craft about, so there are different estimates, about 13, 14 miles long. In front of it looked like a giant pencil. Russian probes viewing this thing, all of a sudden the craft there turns toward the Russian probe, sends a flash of light, and sends the Russian probe as a spinner through space. Welcome to Mars. Not everything out there is friendly. Phase 3, external evidence. Evidence must be real in the real world. This etheric implants and stuff like that, I'm sorry, that's a little out of my league. I want to see real evidence. I want it in an MRI. I want it on a CAT scan. I want to see the beef because it's there. Internal evidence is in you, and X-rays, CAT scans, MRI. Folks, I look at hundreds of these every year, and I'm telling you, the evidence is in these people. There must be outside influences. Fluorescence showing up on abductees within 24 hours of their abduction. Inside influences. The psychology of the abductee. We can't have abductees who scream one thing over here, and then you go to another part of the world, and it's all different. That's funny, because in 1,000 cases I've got worldwide, pretty much the abductees are the same. Now, the look of the creatures may be a little different, because that's just usually a screensaver memory anyway. But the fact is, the events are the same. Even in the religions, in Islam, they call them the jinn. Call them whatever you want. When you describe the event, they'll say, oh, that's the jinn. They know who it is. They just didn't know it was an alien. But they know they can get real rough with you, and they haul you off and not bring you back. Inside influences. The psychology of the entity themselves should be consistent worldwide. Well, it's not true. When you go to Ireland, the fairies, they're different, and they fly around, and it's so wonderful. No, it's not. The actual original story of the fairies is if they find you out in the deep woods and they catch you, you might not come back. Well, that's not the one I read in Aesop's Fables. When you're not reading the right one. You need to go talk to some of these abductees. They have a better story for you. Alien hierarchy. The consistency of the data must be consistent worldwide. You can't have a bunch of these disparate stories that, oh, it's this and it's that. It didn't happen 5,000 different ways. It's reasonably consistent. Here's some photos. This is a photo given to me in 1952 by an 81-year-old man. You can still see the scratches on the negative. I cannot verify its authenticity. I can verify the authenticity of the negative. We have not been able to provide that yet. Wendell Stevens got probably the best collection of UFOs anywhere in the world in UFOs, pictures of UFOs. The map is not the territory. You've heard this before. But if accurate, a map can actually give you an accurate description of what the real territory is going to look like. What I'm telling you is what we have in the UFO field is not the territory. It's a map. Crop circles are not the map. Excuse me, they're not the territory. They're maps. That's all they are. They're not some. People try to make these stuff more than it is. Implants are not the territory. They aren't. They just aren't. UFOs are not the territory. Let me put it in other terms. The waiter's not the chef. He isn't. He kind of looks like him. I mean, he's a little shorter. But the guy that's going to serve your meal is someone else. He's a lot smarter than that little guy. The little grays have an IQ of about, in my opinion, about 80, 85. They're nothing more than a 286 computer with legs. They can't even get your clothes on right. That's why a lot of you realize that something's wrong with this picture. Why is this? My view of the UFO phenomena is that it's literally, it's like we're all like a bunch of dogs. Me too, me too. I'm not unique. Like a bunch of dogs chasing a bus, howling with various different voices, one more enlightened than another. One of these days that bus is going to stop. And you may be looking for a metaphorical fire hydrant. Because I don't think what's going to get off the bus is going to be exactly what you expected. I could be wrong, but I might not. Governments, they have to know this information, provably so. My buddy Ron Regier says he designed some of the components on this DSP satellite, one of 18 floating around the world. You can read your watch from 2,300 miles up. He says this is a $125 million UFO detector. That sound good to you? Sure does to me. 1952, UFOs came over the Capitol building. Everybody knows about that. What you may not know is we have 2 abductees that were in that event. One of them was a pilot. We have his entire flight logs and the entire story and how he was threatened to say that that event did not happen up there when he went up there with that airplane. Nothing happened like what he saw. The second one were a group of people that are on the ground down here. The United States government actually believed in 1952, during that week, we were under attack by an alien force. You probably don't know that, but we were. They thought that. There were 3 anti-aircraft roving batteries in Washington, D.C. in the event that we should be attacked by an alien force. The government was actually scared during this time. It's not the only time either. Here's the UFO view, from the UFO community's view. You got the Watcher, you got the Little Gray. These guys are bad, these guys are kind of okay. These guys are, some of them love these guys, some of them don't like the man in the sky, and everybody loves the Nordic. They're so wonderful. I've got a case where a Nordic treated one of our abductees wonderful and tortured another one in the same mass abduction 3 days later. Tortured him. What does that mean? All it means is he's just following instructions. Somebody bigger than this group runs this stuff. Well, they're all different. No, they're not. Not these people. They've been seen together on the same craft numerous times. In my view, the UFO business is this. You've got the usual suspects, which we showed down here, and then you've got mid-level management. And we've actually had events where some of these characters actually showed up. They mean business, and these guys on the bottom rung here that some of us in here almost worship, they were so terrified of these guys up here. It was just amazing. I'm telling you, our view of the structure of this hierarchy may be vastly different than what we believe. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it might be worth looking into. The people who did the wonderful movie, I haven't seen it yet, it's a good one, I understand, Fast Walker, these are the artists. These are my abductees, by the way, and they gave me these wonderful pictures. They look like photographs, don't they? Because they're all abductees, and these are some of the things. I want to show you just very briefly and very quickly what it might look like inside. I assure you they have less than cordial attitude about these entities. Many times in abduction events, if you'll ask the abductee, is there anyone else there? They'll say, no, just a little guy or these 2 people here. If you'll ask them very carefully in the right way, you'll find out there's someone standing in the dark, almost in every case, giving instructions to the guys working on you. They're not very intelligent. Now, some people find that offensive. It's the way they're constructed. They're made that way. They're made not to rebel. The little guys. The taller one's a little doctor type. He's a lot smarter than they are. If UFOs are real and all these events are occurring, there must be physical evidence that are happening to people. How do you know so much about this? Why do you believe this stuff? Because in 1952, I became a captive audience. What does that mean to me? Well, like I said, I can live with my problems, but when they came after my son and my brother and his wife and my son's wife and just a few other people, it upset me quite a bit that they would do this to children. Not just pick them up, but do other things that are just unmentionable. Why do I believe abductees? They've been talking about people floating for years, and yet you look here and see that scientists can float this sumo wrestler 2 or 3 inches off the ground. You can see a lot better examples than this on the internet. Abductees have been telling the truth for years. 45% of Native American Indians, people of Native American Indians, Irish, Celtic descent show up in our work. 31% of these people report rare drug allergies to procaines. That's just unheard of, people. 35% report surgical work or some type of implantation done to them. 62% of women report missing fetus or gynecological anomalies, many of them with endometriosis. I could go on and on and on here. I've got my shameless promotion time. It's in the book. It's our second printing, and it's got some beautiful color pictures in it, implants and all kinds of stuff. They understand how to manipulate your consciousness like in ways you can scarcely imagine. They can make you believe anything from I'm here to save the planet, fix your ozone hole, and all kinds of things. They hadn't done it in 6,000 years, but that's kind of curious. I'd wish they'd get started if they're going to do that. They have all kinds of things. Why do they pick up more women than men? Well, if they're more technological, it may be because women have a lot more buttons than guys do. I mean, his is basically on and off. If you look at men, they're basically what? Microwaves. Set, time, push, button. You know, that's it, you know. Women are more like a crock pot. They are. And it's a wonderful thing. Men are just push the button. They're just gone, you know. Just weird. I'm sorry, guys, but we're weird. Maybe that's the way, I don't know why the aliens are getting them. I don't know. But if the alien is tampering with these people, there is actual evidence that can be collected, and I'm going to show you how that can be done. The fact is, they came while you slept. That's a metaphor. It means more than you can imagine at this point, in my view. The fact is, the alien we see in the visible range. See how big this little white stripe is here? That's all of visible light between 400 and 700 nanometers. All this down here is other light that you don't see and light above that you don't see. Below and above 400 and 700 nanometers. In my opinion, the alien sees in all three of these ranges at one time. In fact, maybe four. Because many abductees will describe them as, it was like they were scanning us. How do they do that without equipment? Because he sees with X-ray as well. He's looking for something. Probably broken bones that he left in you the last time he messed with you. My doctor at the VA hospital gave me an exam the other day. He says, where's your pain? I said, a little way over here, doc. And he says, no, it's on the right side. I said, no, it's not. It's over here. He said, yes, it is. It's over here. We get this big argument. I said, don't tell me where my pain's at. I know where it's at. He said, well, your broken ribs are over here. I said, I don't have any broken ribs. Since then, I've written a paper about abductees and how injuries can occur by the alien and how they cover it up with previous injury. You get healed literally so fast. Well, they're healing you. You missed the point. Who put the number 12 boot in my rib cage to begin with? That's what I want to know. Well, he healed you though, didn't he? You missed the point. The paper is really a wonderful paper because one of the contributing people talking about it's a neurosurgeon who brought this question to me because she had seen it in her own practice. The visible and invisible, unusual markings. Let's talk about that for just a moment. Physical evidence in the visible realm. What kind of marks? Anything from visible marks, scars, lesions, cuts, missing skin, imprinted invisible marks on the abductee, hair color change in your entire beliefs. You go to get an abduction event and come back and your entire beliefs have changed. Think there might have been a problem there? That's pretty bizarre. Sexual orientation different when you get back? It's happened. Ask Dr. Carla Turner. We talked about this numerous times. Medical stats are different. Extra tissue, other things you didn't plan to be in there are inside you now. Unfamiliar objects that appear in the human body. In this case, a lady has been torn on her back by something that had claws. She referred to it as a reptile. I don't know, I wasn't there, but I did see that myself. This is a lady in Houston, Texas. She's very well-to-do, quite rich, and very famous. She's got like 39 laws changed in the state of Texas. Very influential woman. Had an abduction event, went on TV the next day right in front of God and everybody. She says, I don't care what anybody thinks. It happened, and here's the mark. It happened to me. Very clear-headed. I'm just going to show you some of these marks that show up on some of these people. Marks that weren't there the night before. Well, it was just sleep paralysis, sir. I must have been sleeping when something tore a hunk out of the side of my neck in the middle of the night. I'm sure that's true. One lady goes on her abduction experiment. They take her off, comes back with half her labia missing. All them people must be mental health patients. No, they're not, but this one is. In fact, the MHMR of Houston sent this abductee to me. She said, his events are real. He does have psychopathology. I said, I understand. I'm sitting here looking at him, my dear. And I said, he needs some help. Thorazine or something right away. He was a mess. But his events are real. She knew that because she had the events too, and the marks on him are exactly like the marks on his psychiatrist. Just like they were even when her children were born, just like his. Pretty rough to mess with a psych patient when their marks are just like yours and they're the patient and you're the therapist. Makes it a little ragged. All kinds of marks that show up on these people, from bruisings in the infrared and visible range, objects under the skin, as you can see here, dermatological scoops. I've got one on my shin. I'll show you when we get out of here and go later, and I'll show you this later. I'll go into this in more detail. What's the interesting thing about the scoops? Well, in this case, they gave the guy a scoop, and then they came back and gave him another one, and then they came back and gave him a third one. If that wasn't enough, another fellow we were working with out in the state of California had 7 of them in a row. These dermatological-like scoops we found literally are a condition of something we refer to as solar elastosis. Why is that significant to us? Because one of my abductees, before we ever did the test on this, described it in great detail, the equipment, everything used, and the intense ultraviolet light that burned her and cauterized that wound. Now, that happened to me when I was nearly 4 years old. After an event, the next morning, I had this huge 5/8 of an inch. I mean, my leg's that big around. 5/8 of an inch is a big mark. It's like a crater on my leg, and there's no scar, and I can't figure out why. Why is that? As a little boy, I can't figure that out. I don't understand. One of our ladies, long before we did any medical test whatsoever, drew the procedure in great detail. Why do I believe her? Because every bit of the medical evidence we have supports every word she said after the fact. This abductee, you might say, had less than a positive experience. He said, "Look what they did to me." I said, "May I use your photographs?" He said, "Absolutely." You think he's the only person it happened to? When I see you and you tell me I'm an abductee, I want to see the evidence. I want to see. And if you're a real abductee, events are happening to you, and there actually is evidence. There really is. There's no question about it. This is a man in a home where the abductions are occurring, and he gets tagged, and he's not even abducted, doesn't believe a word of any of this. But he can't figure out why fluorescence is all over him and why he's got these bruisings on him, just like the lady that's there. This is my daughter-in-law from Brazil. She said, she fled Brazil from these aliens to get to the United States, hoping that when she got here, they wouldn't follow. Guess what? We're back. This is the mark they left on her neck. And I said, "It looks like to me, young lady, that you went and got a tattoo on your neck." She said, "I have a phobia of tattoos, and so does my mother, who's also an abductee." I said, "Still looks like a tattoo to me." She said, "That's after tattoo removal, Mr. Sims. After tattoo removal. It's not a tattoo." She said, "The federal police of Brazil took this picture." That's what I want to hear. You went to the police. You did the right thing. I want to hear that. But I believe a lot of these cases are real. In the State Department of Puerto Rico, when I went down there, I was invited. The State Department walked us through and everything. He's in a presentation at night, says, "My God, why in the world would I get that same symbol that's on your daughter-in-law's neck? Why would I photograph that years before in San Francisco, graffiti on a wall? Why am I obsessed with this symbol?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Then I come here and it's on your daughter's neck." He said, "It makes me wonder." I said, "About your own experiences?" He said, "Exactly." We do have some videos available. I don't have much to sell. I'm not in the business of making money at this stuff, folks. Everything we do is free. It's a philanthropic effort. If we do surgeries on you or for you or anything else, you know how much it's going to cost you? Nada. Not one dime. We do not charge for our work. I can't, in all good conscience, have gone through these events and then watch you do the same thing and sit there and think, "Well, I just ought to make some money off this deal." I just can't do it. I'm going to show you something I have not shown very many people. I have permission to do this. I don't have permission to do it. I was ordered to do it by the mother. These are 2 children who died as a result of their abductions in Dallas, Texas years ago. Bodies don't bruise after death. That's the children after their abduction. The terrible thing in this event is the mother was abducted at the same time. She said, "I could hear my children screaming in the other room." "Mr. Sims, who speaks for me? Who speaks for my children?" I said, "I'll speak for them. I'll do that. I don't care. I have no axe to grind. All I want is the truth, and I want somebody accountable." So this is the children. This is the mommy Isn't she interesting? Nice lady, sweetheart. Well, this is her before and after her abduction when she came to report all this to me. Can you even recognize her as the same person? She ended up in the OR. She's got bruisings on both sides of her head where they clamped a device on her head. She's got swelling throughout. She didn't do well after this event at all. Police officer in Houston, Texas, Friendswood, Texas. Alien walks through the glass window, left a holographic image of his hands and arm in the glass. We actually have that. Pretty neat stuff, you know. I love evidence because it's there, my friends. There is evidence. You just have to know how to look for it. Why is it? How can you find evidence and other people can't? Well, he said, I know how to hunt these beings. I was there consciously. I remember. They have habits just like we do. And you can capitalize on those habits just like they capitalize on yours. That's why you're an easy victim, an easy mark. The alien sees in infrared. This is how he may see you and your cat, is an example. They don't see you like you think they do. Infrared, you can block out all kinds of things on checks and paper and forge stuff, and you can pull out your infrared equipment there, and you can read right through it as if you can block it out all you want to. It'll show up just as easy as anything in the world. You have a heat signature in the infrared range. They can spot you for a mile. Well, I'll get a camera set up and I'll film them when they abduct me. No, you won't. They'll just turn it right off. You think they don't see it on? I want to show you a little bit more evidence very quickly. How they see with their eyes. Whenever I was a little boy and they came into my room, I was wide awake. I didn't know what the thing was. Kind of looked like that, but his eyes were perfectly round, not this Lexus type models. Mine was a Ford, you know, the old cheap round eyes, you know. I think that's a lens cover. One of my abductees begged me in tears crying. She's now deceased. She said, please show me how to protect my children. So I gave her post-hypnotic suggestion to assault her captor. I want to know what it would be like. She didn't care. She just wanted to defend herself. She didn't care about my science. Forget that. She tore his eye cover off. Well, you're paralyzed. You can't move. Want to bet? That's just a suggestion. I got a better one for you. You can. Okay. You want to know what it was? It was a red stippled screen with 6 little white lights going back and forth, just like something you might see in medical equipment. As if this thing had been biologically engineered with some equipment. I don't think all of the grays are like that, but some of them appear to be, based on her report. How do they see in the world of X-rays? They seem to examine. These abductees talk about being scanned. The fact is, many abductees, a number of them, me included, have broken bones with no history of injury. Foreign objects in the body even ejects automatically. Implanted objects that were installed or embedded objects that were left inside them. Artificial inseminations that lead to spontaneous ejecta. Apparent pregnancies, missing fetuses, full-term pregnancies. I mean that. We have 3 cases where the so-called fetus, you know how they never get here, first trimester they're gone or second trimester. We have some that got here, 3 of them. Got DNA on one of them, working on that one right now. Like I said, there is plenty of evidence. You just have to get there in time to get it. Evidence, in my opinion, abounds in the infrared, ultraviolet, and X-ray, and visible light spectrums. The implants, I'll give you this very quickly. The implant history is quite simple. How I discovered it, simply my own experience. I'm laying on a table with 11 degrees incline, and I can hear them discussing what they're fixing to do to me, and I cried like a baby. I was 12 years old. It broke my heart. I couldn't believe that someone would do that to a little boy. I just couldn't understand that. And I just wept. Why would somebody do this? I don't mean abduct, I mean what they did. I'm not going to describe it, there's no point in it. Why in the world would you do that to a child? It's for your betterment. Why do I not believe that? I was invited to present to 250 surgeons an AMA-sponsored program, continuing education for Embedded objects of alleged alien-human contact. John Muir Medical Hospital. Only researcher I know that's happened to. What's the point? 3 doctors came on board, as a matter of fact. They were that impressed. All we presented was medical evidence. We did not talk about flying saucers and aliens. All we talked about is medical evidence. These are some of the universities and other places that help us with some of our research. Like I say, we pay for this out of our pocket. When we're fortunate, some of these people will do this fairly free, but this is one of our first public cases. We actually had done cases before this, but I mentioned 4 things in that medical presentation: that if these objects are alien in origin, there will be no signs of inflammatory response, either chronic or acute. You know what the doctor said? You're nuts. He did. He said it's not possible. He said, you get a splinter, you have an inflammatory response, right? Get a spatter effect from a gunshot, bullet gets in you, don't take it out, what happens? The body will coat it and cover it. Inflammatory response. One's either chronic, one's acute, doesn't matter. There will be no inflammatory response around these objects whatsoever if they are alien in origin. None. Wrong nerve cells will be around these objects if in fact they're alien in origin. You know what they said? You're nuts. They did. They were very kind the way they said it, but that's what they meant. I said, it gets worse. And I told them 2 other things. They said, that's not going to happen. Pathology showed no signs of inflammatory response, either chronic or acute. Wrong nerve cells present around these objects. How in God's name did you know that would be true? I was there, remember? Conscious. That's why. So I know. The objects themselves, one of the first group of them, we've got obviously different ones. The first one's actually turned out to be meteoric in origin. In this case here, in the foot surgery, we're fixing to look into very quickly. This is a doctor took this x-ray in Brazil. This is his wife. The doctor, who's also an abductee, can't see an object nearly 3 inches long inside his wife's foot. I have to point it out to him. Why? Because abductees are told to destroy evidence and to ignore things. That's why they don't come up with a lot of evidence. You have to do it for them. Like I say, we do have universities and others that handle our work and do things, wonderful things for us. This is a genetic engineer. He's got a little 6-shaped object in his neck. He is absolutely scared, terrified to death. He said, what in the world is this thing? Lady's got one in her hand. Lady, this is her back. This is a military woman in the military. This is her breast. This is her stomach. This is her lung area. There's the object. It is approximately the size of a walnut. Her doctor says, I think she was abducted. He said, that object is not natural, and it's next to her heart, and we're never going to touch it. Thank God you're not going to do it. 8 little tiny gold spheres found in a little girl's nose on 2 different occasions after 2 different abductions, found by her mother after the little girl reported a little bald-headed man with large black eyes came into my house. These are not implants, people. There are so many stupid things out there on the internet about what implants are. You've all got implants. You don't. I look at hundreds of x-rays every year, MRIs and CAT scans, and I assure you, most people do not have any implants. You don't. They're extremely rare. Yeah, but they don't sell books. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just the truth. Golden object, you'll find also in my display case in the back that you'll see I have a display with some of the implants in there in the other room, of course. You're welcome to come back, obviously, purchase some books if you choose to. In the book, some of these pictures are in there, but you'll also see a number of these in the flesh in the other room if you'd like to see them. You're welcome to do so. That was found in a lady's nose. This is an ocular implant that was found in a lady's eye. 8 people in the same mass abduction in 2 states and several cities on 2 occasions. December 8th, 1992 and December 11th, they came back and took out the implants. They missed one, and it fell out of her eye in front of her boss at work. That's the only reason we got it. She tried to destroy it while she was there. And her boss says, if you don't take that thing, the size of a seed, a little grain of sand, and give it to that investigator guy that you introduced me to the other day, I will fire you. Okay, that's the only reason we got it. She tried to destroy it 3 times in front of her boss. I know, these people are programmed, people. Me too. I'm no different. They did it to me the same way. Dr. Carla Turner, before she passed away, Carla, she was here the last time I was here. Unbelievable evidence. She gave this to me. It wasn't just then. I have it with me. What is this? She said, Daryl, she said, this is evidence that I had a forensic lab look at. And she said, you need to check it out. She said, they said this compound cannot exist in this matrix. She said, they said, you're never going to use our name on this, and we don't know what it is. We don't want to know. That's the often answer you get because you made the mistake of saying the word alien. Don't do that. In your lab work, you just let them discover it. This compound has two things in it. It has metal and it has a biological substance, and they're both intertwined. It's impossible. Want to bet? There is evidence. In my event, this is not me. A gentleman called me here a while back and said, Mr. Sims, he said, I was abducted during the 60s as well. And I said, 1960? I was 12 years old. That happened to me. I said, they started saying about nasal passage, this long needle thing, broke the bones of my nose, screamed, I was there, I remember. Screamed and everything. They forgot to say, it won't hurt. You won't feel anything. You won't remember. Well, I did. And it hurt. It broke the bones of my nose. I heard it break the bones as it went deep inside behind my eye. And he said, that happened to me too. And I said, well, I don't want to trash you here, but, I hear that a lot. You got any x-rays? Yes, I do. It's okay. He sent them to me. He said, there's the object right there. In midbrain, right behind my eye, just exactly the same location you described yours. I said, oh my gosh. He said, I didn't tell the doctors anything. He said, they're freaked out. They can't figure out how an object got inside my skull, deep inside, with no trauma, no tissue damage, nothing. They can't figure it out. I just keep letting them take more and more of those CAT scans and things. He said, it's really neat. He said, they're proving my case for me. I said, you are wiser than your years, sir. Let them do it. But I will at some point, at a later time, show you those sonograms. It does show an entity inside this woman. It is, in my opinion, not human. Has a large bulbous head, long pointed chin. Two other doctors in one of the finest fetal hospitals in England looked at it, horrified. For a lot of reasons. One, because the sonograms were not taken the way they should have been. It's a long story, but the point is, some of you ladies have been telling the truth. In our last few moments here, I want to show you a few things in the invisible light in the fluorescent range, which is a lot of what my book's about on how to find your own evidence. You don't need me. You don't need anybody to find this stuff. It's easy to find much of it. He sees in the infrared and ultraviolet ranges I've mentioned. I believe that to be true for a lot of reasons. That's what fluorescence looks like on a woman's foot without a black light. Had a top investigator tell me one day, he says, I never found no fluorescence on anybody. I said, did you use the black light, sir? No. What part of that did you not understand? It's in the invisible range. If you don't use a black light, you will never see it. If you look at some of these photographs, you can see fluorescence on these people in different places. You can see the dermal ridges on the fingerprints on these people with fluorescence. If it comes off, if you can wash it off, if you can get it off in any way, don't call me. If you wash, scrub, beat on it, do everything you can, you cannot get that out. It subdermally penetrates your skin. I want to hear from you quickly because it's gone in about 24 hours. Your body will absorb it. In Washington State, the lady said, she had a black light, but I couldn't photograph it because we don't have a camera. I said, well, draw me a picture, sweetie. She did. She says, my son's leg, she said, there's the hand in fluorescence where the thing held his leg down as they did whatever it was they did to him. The fluorescence has different colors. One of them is often brilliant green. Hence, maybe the term little green men. Maybe somebody was seeing something that we didn't know about. This is the first case I discovered on this lady in 1992. Remarkable case. We found on the inside of her arm, right here, a Mandelbrot set. That's a mathematical configuration you see there on the border of chaos and order. That was not an accident, how it got on the inside of her arm. She went to the bathroom as soon as she saw what? She's, what the blankety blank is that? And I said, young lady, I don't know. I said, this is sometimes we find these things. She ran to the bathroom and acted just like a rape victim as she scrubbed and scrubbed and cried and cried. I don't know why. I'm just saying that these people, how can fluorescence be used in the medical realm? This is a carcinoma. Carcinomas, you can fluoresce them and you can watch the growth of it so you can see the medical value of fluorescing or DNA tagging and this sort of thing. One of the things that ought to concern people, though, is why is it that all this stuff has been kept so secret? Well, there are all kinds of goofy ideas out there of why that may be. But I suspect something different. This is the famous Irani Guranchi. She's also in my book. I'm doing a fluorescence test on her. She was very excited by this. One of the greatest ufologists in all of South America. Incredible woman. Fluorescence on some abductees. Some of the marks that we find on them is an example here as well. This RN showed fluorescence on her hand. She had to circle it because obviously couldn't see it without a black light. We have done and are doing some current work in forensics concerning fluorescence. One of the things we check is in your mouth. I will check certain people if you want me to do this with you. The fact is that when you're given on this craft, given a material, it's brown, it's like bad chocolate milk to drink, it'll make you defecate on the floor within probably no more than 90 seconds. And what's weird about that is the inside of your mouth will glow pure white when you come back after your event. So we check inside the mouth as well. We want to know. We want to know all about this fluorescent business. We use all kinds of specialty equipment in fluorescence to study this phenomenon. I won't go into it now. The one thing that we find about the aliens, he has no dermal ridges whatsoever. This is not a big shock or anything like that. DNA fluorescent tagging has been used for a long time. I suspect the alien may be doing the same thing. We have a lady who was sexually assaulted by a MIB, an MIB, a large creature, human-like, unbelievable case. I know the woman very well. She doesn't lie. I've warned her, if I find your husband's DNA here, you're in a lot of trouble because you're fixing to cost me a lot of money. I don't think that we will find his DNA for a lot of reasons. This is me going over some of the material that she sent. We will send this off the lab when I can afford it. I just tapped out right now. I can't pay for any more than I can. Some of the equipment that we use, I'm going to close here in just a couple of minutes. Some of the evidence that she sent, we check it for radiation. We check it for everything you can imagine, everything. There is plenty of evidence out there, my friends. You just have to find it. This is the underwear she sent, and we checked it under various nanometer lengths. You'll see that it fluoresces in places sometimes, in other nanometer lengths it does not. That means the fluorescence we're finding there, in effect, most of the fluorescence we're looking for from the alien is 267 nanometers. That's generally what we're finding. Luminescence exists as well on animals and nature. Why are aliens doing this thing? If you're an abductee or a contactee, stop whining. Get over it. It's okay. You'll come back. Most of you. Most of us. It'll be okay. Really, I'm serious. We have to have a sense of humor about this sort of thing. You may even develop as a result of it. You may be better for it. You may even turn into something better. I don't know. But I certainly hope so. And I hope you see yourself, because this is how I see abductees and contactees myself.
For the first time in history, one man is coming forward with tangible evidence that he claims is proof of an alien intelligence visiting Earth. Dr. Roger Lear is a surgeon from Southern California who has been performing operations on patients for over 30 years.
So far, 8 surgeries have been performed, and with the 8 surgeries, we have removed 9 objects. The commonality, of course, is that all the individuals are subjects of the alien abduction phenomena.
In 1996, he performed one of the first surgeries to remove an alien implant from the jaw of an alleged abductee.
The gentleman that we did the surgery on for the procedure to remove an object from the left jaw was in private industry, and he had a history of alien abduction.
As with most abductees, the patient was reluctant to come forward or to have his face publicly shown.
There is a certain stigma involved with abductees. They have innate fear about telling somebody about what happened. They may feel that they may lose their job, or their career may be in jeopardy, even financial loss. So there are some very practical things involved.
What you are about to see is the actual video of the first implant being removed. We must warn you, this footage is not for the faint of heart. First, the surgeon administers local anesthesia by injection to deaden the area around the implant. Once the surgeon makes his initial incision into the tissue, surgical clamps are applied to keep the wound open. Then, the surgeon deepens the incision, and an X-ray instrument called a fluoroscan is brought in to locate the implant under the skin. Once the implant is located, a probe is inserted, and the implant is finally removed. Dr. Lear described some of the extraordinary findings discovered during this amazing surgery.
There is no portal of entry. There's no evidence how the object got inside the body. Then when we look at the soft tissues that surround the object, we find there is no inflammatory response. This is impossible, because anything that enters the body should have an inflammatory response. And then thirdly, they are surrounded by a large number of nerve proprioceptors which are not anatomically correct.
Once the outer biological membrane was removed, it revealed a triangular-shaped object. This object was housed in yet another gray membrane. Remarkably, this inner membrane could not be cut, even with a surgical scalpel. The implant was then sent to Los Alamos National Laboratory for metallurgic testing.
We knew that when we got the initial report back from Los Alamos that we didn't have something that was common, because Los Alamos is a world-class laboratory and would not recommend further testing on anything that they didn't feel was strange. So it was the combination of elements that were in these objects that I think inspired them to advise us that more tests should be done.
The implants were then sent to New Mexico Tech Laboratory, where a battery of metallurgic tests were performed on the objects.
The theory that they put forth was that these were portions of meteorites. They did not know they were removed from the human body.
Amazingly, the New Mexico Tech Lab report revealed that the elements in the implants were composed of meteorites so rare, only a few had ever been found. At this point, scanning electron microscope analysis was conducted on the implants. The results revealed the implants were manufactured and not naturally occurring meteorites. Amazingly, results showed the implants had been connected to the patient's nerve endings.
The second set of tests following some of the tests that were run at New Mexico was run by University of California at San Diego.
The laboratory results from the University of California at San Diego confirmed the earlier tests. Astonishingly, a portion of the metal analyzed in the implants was extraterrestrial and did not come from Earth.
Some of the elements that were found in combination were of non-terrestrial or extraterrestrial origin.
The evidence is overwhelming. The implications are staggering. In each case, the chain of evidence has been documented, and the test results are shocking.
This could be the proof that science has been looking for. The implications of this discovery are worldwide and affect every single living human being.
I am a contactee. I am not an abductee. I willingly go. I want to help. I find it fascinating, and I feel that it is important that other souls who are also having these experiences try to come forth with the information, because we are not being told the entire story by our governments. The crafts that I have been into, one of the motherships that I go to is called Atlantia. It is approximately 250 miles long. It has a population of it, from what I understand, of anywhere from 150 to 500,000 beings at one particular time. It is completely self-sufficient. It needs nothing. My last contact was 2.5 weeks ago in North County, San Diego. And ladies and gentlemen, I have had the opportunity to converse with the Andromedans regarding much UFO information that is circulating throughout the UFO community. And one of the things that I have been able to do is to verify where many of the alien bases, the joint alien-human bases, are on the world. Iran, in the middle of the Iranian desert. Tibet, high in the mountains of the Himalayas. Narvik, in Scandinavia, near a military base. Africa, there are 2 in Egypt. 1 in Algeria, near Tahat. 1 in the Sudan. Okay, there are 2 in Australia. 1 south of Alice Springs called Pine Gap, and another in the Great Victoria Desert. These are both built by the CIA of the United States. And the government there and the aliens are both operating both these bases. Okay, now I'd like to go to South America, to the country of Brazil. Also, along the Andes Mountains in Chile, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina. There are many bases as well in the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to show you where they are in North America and the United States. State of Montana, Red Mountain. In Nevada, Black Rock Desert. And the other in the Kawich Mountain Range, which is known as Area 51.
Talk a little bit about the ringleaders then of this whole orchestration that's going here on Earth. According to your Andromedan sources, there are 22 races originally colonized the Earth, the first race being the reptilians from Alpha Draconis. What was the nature of their colony here?
Well, they're Hyperborean. Basically, they're explorers. And they're also genetic engineers. They would just colonize. They would take samples. They would hang a flag and say, this belongs to us, just like we did with the moon. You know, but we weren't the first ones there. Exactly what we've done. They were explorers. And they would just go to a place. They would see what was there. They would explore it. If there were minerals that they needed, if there were other life forms, organisms, whatever it was that they needed, they took, and then when it was done, they had enough, they moved on and just kept exploring and expanding their realm of exploration or territory.
And you said they were dumped here.
Originally they were. They were dumped in Alpha Draconis. Nobody knows exactly where they came from, and my understanding is that even in their ancient history, they don't know exactly where they came from. But they were left in Alpha Draconis because that particular system offered them the highest probability of survival. And from there, they were able to create craft, space travel. I mean, they're magnificent in what they did, and they're to be commended for what they did. But the fact that they need to control and dominate and manipulate to the degree, sorry, I have a problem with that. And so does half of the other of the galaxy. That's just the way they are. They're the biggest bully. Nobody can beat them up or wipe them out, so therefore they have no motivation to change. So that's the space they hold. And you know, the Andromedans actually consider them the ultimate warriors, which says a lot, you know, for whatever reasons.
A lot of bullies end up destroying themselves.
Well, that's something that may possibly need to happen, we hope soon, or I hope soon. You know, because we need to be free. We need to have our shackles that we've been put around us let go of, so that we can really evolve.
Okay, so the Andromedans tell you that the Alpha Draconans are here now. Where?
There are 1,833 of them that have been living underground between 100 and 200 miles beneath the surface. They've been here, some of them have been here a long, long time. They have lifespans that are thousands of years. They're carnivorous. They are not friendly to mankind, at least the ones that are here.
Are you saying carnivorous, they eat humans?
Yes. and they won't eat a dead human. It has to be alive at the time of the killing. Their preference is children. You know, and we've been told, you shouldn't talk about that. You know, there are other people say, well, you better not talk about the reptilians. Well, you know, bull. You know, why not? According to the Andromedans, they're responsible for 31,712 children disappearing in the last 25 years from the United States. These children were food. And I'm supposed to just shut up and not say anything about it because people don't want to hear it? That's tough. That's tough. You know, Westchester County, in the last 5 years, 3,000 children in Westchester County, New York, have vanished without a trace. Where are they going? Why are we allowing this to happen? And why should people stay in denial about it?
Now, how are they able to do this? How are they able to? How are they able to? How are they able to do it? How are they able to come up out of this from underground and do it, or do they have?
There are tunneling systems everywhere. They're being helped by the Greys, and also there are groups within the higher echelon that are actually helping them acquire this.
So human beings are abducting the kids and giving them to the Greys, who in turn give them to the Alpha Draconians?
That's right. That's part of the deal. They won't come up as long as we feed them down there. You understand? It's about human beings selling themselves out. The echelon attitude here, the needs of the few outweigh the needs of humanity. And sorry, that just isn't right. You know, but it's going to have to be humanity that's going to rise up and take the stand. You're just going to have to turn off your televisions. They're going to have to get in their car. They're going to have to fire everybody in Washington, D.C. that knows and does nothing. And they're going to have to do something. You know, this apathy's got to end. Otherwise, the way we live is going to end. Period. I mean, that's the bottom line. You know, and I'm not coming from a fear space. I'm really quite angry about the apathy and the fact that, you know, when people give lectures and try to tell this, people want to stand up and fight with them. Look at what's happening around us. The indications are everywhere. Everywhere. The truth is now an obscure thing. You know, the lie is the norm. There's something wrong here. What's wrong with this picture?
Aside from the carnivorous aspect to the Alpha Draconians, why else are they dangerous to humanity?
Because they don't like us.
And what are they willing to do with humanity?
Eat us. There's no need for us. I mean, look at where we are. Look at us right now as a civilization, as a society. Okay? They don't need anything. They have all this technology that they want. We can't really offer them except maybe work, do some work for them. But they don't need all of us to work for them. They don't respect human life in any way whatsoever. And this goes back to Lyra, to where the original war started. When they got to Lyra originally, they saw this human race that was plentiful in food, that could grow food, that could do all of these agricultural things. And mankind on a whole is really agricultural. We really, as a race, if we were left alone, would be nurturing the earth. We would be living in tribal communities like the Native American Indians did. You know, that's really our essence, our nature.
Okay, what are the physical characteristics of the Alpha Draconians? What do they look like?
I don't have that. Maybe it's in the car. They're ugly. I mean, they think we're ugly, too. You know, and I guess it's all a matter of perspective and belief system. In my belief system, and I'm only taking responsibility for me, they're ugly. They're anywhere from 7 to 22 feet tall. They can weigh up to 1,800 pounds. They're reptilian. The ones that have stubby tails, if you see one that has no tail, he's of the warrior class or the worker class. The longer the tail, the higher their rank. When you see one with long tails, with winged appendages, he's considered royalty. Whenever you see one, you ought to just run like hell. You shouldn't approach it. You shouldn't provoke it. Just get the hell out of its way. Just get out of its way. Just run. You know, there is a way to kill them. If you can't cut off their head, they have two hearts. There's one here, underneath this armpit, and one here. Or if you can't get to that area and you need to slow it down, you need to hit it right above its groin area. It has a very large liver. You need to wound it there. to slow it down. It is not something where man-to-man combat you're going to be able to deal with, because they apparently have the strength of 12, 15 men. They're incredibly quick. They're incredibly psychic. They know what you're going to do before you do it. And you know, if they get here en masse, we got real problems. Real problems.
What do the Andromedans advise human beings to do if they encounter an Alpha Draconin?
To leave. You leave its space. Get away. To get away.
What if they can't?
Then they can't.
And if they can't?
They'll usually be killed.
And what do they, have the Andromedans spoken in any detail about what a human being should do if they are in that position? For karmic purposes? For
look, that's not karmic at all. Or a lot of these, you know, all this metaphysical stuff, you know, where you chose to be here. A lot of, you know, in some situations that's true. When you're creating your reality and in your space, but when you're being invaded, that's not karma. That's a violation of free will. You know.
If your free will is being violated, Alex, what should you do?
You should ask for help.
Okay.
Ask for help. Put a call up to God. Put a call up to heaven. Put a call to the Andromedans, the Pleiadians, whomever. Just put a call up and deal with it. You know, I don't know. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. They don't like us. We're considered a food source for them. For them. You know, we're a food source for the Greys, but in an entirely different way.
I've heard that the reptilians feed off our fear. Is that true?
The Greys do and the Orions do. The reptilians tend to live off the flesh. That's not an area I like to go into much. But according to the Andromedans, the last 25 years, the reptilians that are on the planet are responsible for over 30,000 children disappearing. I get in a lot of trouble when I talk in UFO circles about this. You can't talk about that, Alice. Why not? In Westchester County, New York, in the last 3 years, 5,000 children have disappeared without a trace.
In New York?
Westchester County, New York. Wow. George Andrews, E.T. Friends and Foes, he's got a huge section in his book on that.
Why is there so much activity?
And nobody wants to talk about it. You know, denial is the dragon we all have to slay right now. It isn't Lucifer, it isn't Satan, it's denial.
Is it the missing people or children who disappear, is it just Draconins, or are there other races taking children just for other purposes to take them back?
Greys have done extensively taken children as well. A lot of them are on their motherships. A lot of the children were taken to Phobos, which is also an artificial satellite. And they've been experimented on. The planet as a whole, over 100,000 people a year vanish without a trace on the planet. They figure 25,000 in the United States on an average just disappear without a trace.
What about adults? If adults, if are free spirits, they can't touch you as free spirit, or can they?
As a free spirit.
Yeah, in other words, the way I understand you're saying that some of these people can't bother you, you know.
They can't own your soul. They can't, no. The soul's eternal, you know, but your soul's in this physical form.
Right.
You know, and that's easy to cart around.
Well, who picks these, I mean, not dragons, but these Tyrians? Do they have people like us who go after these children? They sure can't come 8 miles up. They can't live on the earth.
They have help.
They have help.
They have help. They have help. Yes. Somebody on the surface is gathering the children and taking them to them. That's all I'm going to say, because I'll get in big trouble, especially now on video. Okay? But just think out the process. Take it apart, take the whole thing apart, and figure out how could they get there. And you'll come up with the answer. It's real plain. It's real plain. And who stands to benefit by giving them children? And they like children.
I have interest in memories of the Queen of England, and when I was used there for ritual abuse, because I grew up partly in France also, so I was brought there and used for ritual abuse. I have a memory where I was tied to an altar, and there were also people at an altar, and it was round, almost like Stonehenge-like. I was tied to an altar, the center altar, and there was a person tied on top of me and enchained. The arms were enchained, and we were enchained. He was on top of me, and I was quite younger at that age. And the Queen came out. She transformed and literally shapeshifted, and she came, and there were some of there were some with her, but I'm supposing the ones under her, and they went to the other altars with the other people tied on them, on the altars, and she came up to where the altar was, where I was, and she bent down, and she literally ripped out. She had shapeshifted before she bent down, though, huge, and she ripped out the guy on top of me. She ripped out his innards, directly his heart, just ripped it out. A large dragon, not quite dragon. It's hard to explain. Draconian, more draconian-like looking. They're quite large, and she's very, very large. She claws, or very, very large claws. I remember she just ripped at him and literally ripped his heart out, and the blood came over me. And as she did that, so did the ones around. They did the same thing to the people around.
She gave the lead.
Yes, and you know, I just remember seeing her, because the way I was put down, the way I was like down, I remember seeing her, and the other was dressed in cloaks also. Like they seemed to be dressed in maybe a Druidic priest sort of cloak.
What color?
I think dark black. It was black and a dark red, if I remember right. It was dark black with red, some red on it. And I remember that happened to me, and I felt like they were trying to break me also and put an energy in me, terrorize me to the point they were seeing what point I could go to.
Pero ahora vamos con el caso de Giovanna en Italia, una mujer que quedó embarazada de un supuesto contacto con seres extraterrestres, y vea usted lo que ocurrió. Verdaderamente impactó a toda Europa y muy especialmente a Italia. Max Schiaffino.
Se piensa que es ciencia ficción, una novela, pero el caso de Giovanna es impresionante por la cantidad de pruebas físicas, su testimonio y sobre todo un feto alienígena. Esta es la historia.
En la serie Misterio de la cadena 1 Mediaset, en julio de este año, se presentó la historia de Giovanna, una joven italiana de la región de Cerdeña, una historia no solo de contacto, sino de abducción. Todo comienza cuando tenía 4 años. Ahora tiene 41 años y habla por primera vez.
Recuerdo que era un disco volador que estaba flotando, de color metálico. No recuerdo cómo llegué adentro de él. Me veo flotando. Alrededor de mí hay 4 criaturas. Yo me veo sin ataduras. Me dicen que no me mueva.
¿Cómo te lo dicen?
Me lo dicen telepáticamente. Me dicen que no me mueva, que no me va a pasar nada, que no me van a hacer nada.
¿Qué es lo que iban a hacer?
Principalmente están en la búsqueda de material biológico, tejido, sangre.
Todo esto sería la clásica historia de rapto, de abducción por parte de estos seres, pero lo interesante es que existen pruebas de estas visitas nocturnas.
Lo he recordado poco a poco.
¿Lo recuerdas por las marcas que tenías?
Sí, por las marcas que traía. La fosforescencia que salía de su cuerpo, que es una sustancia que estaba en toda su piel, que servía para manipular nuestro cuerpo, que servía como sustancia desinfectante, para que ellos no se contagiaran de nosotros y nosotros de ellos.
Al analizarla en laboratorio encontraron que esta sustancia no era natural.
Esto es lo que llamamos una sustancia silicia en base de mica. Esta es una muestra que se tomó en la habitación de Giovanna, que estaba en una tela enrollada en su casa. Hemos visto que no contiene nitrato de fósforo, que de manera natural puede dar la fluorescencia. Es una materia muy particular. Los electrones de esta sustancia están excitados, que nosotros llamamos modificados en su estructura, que da un gran campo magnético. Esto es como si el fósforo lo metiéramos en un acelerador de partículas que Giovanna no tiene posibilidad de hacerlo en su casa.
Narra Giovanna que con la luz hacen que los humanos no nos podamos mover. Quedamos a su disposición y que hay muchas cosas que no ha podido recordar. Pero ¿para qué hacen estos seres este tipo de pruebas con nosotros?
Porque somos una raza biocompatible. Somos la única raza biocompatible. Genéticamente somos la especie que más se acerca a su especie. Estamos ayudando a crear una raza híbrida. Es una raza destinada a la extinción, a menos que nosotros los ayudemos.
Como prueba de que lo que está viviendo es auténtico, tiene videos y fotografías de las naves que la abducen. Los videos son impresionantes. Son nocturnos tomados con su celular, donde se aprecia un disco volador desplazándose en un plano diagonal, con fuerte luz interior y que no se asemeja a nada parecido de la Tierra. Por otro lado, las fotografías son muy claras, bien definidas, con puntos de referencia o acercamientos donde se aprecia que se trata de discos voladores. Para finalizar, pudo fotografiar a uno de estos raptores. Tiene exámenes radiológicos donde presenta pruebas de implantes que tiene en el cerebro. Se determinó que era un objeto sin poderse calificar.
No tengo ninguna cicatriz donde se aprecie por dónde entró el objeto.
La mandaron a hacerse exámenes y el doctor encontró un ritmo cardíaco parecido a un bebé, pero no se veía el bebé. A Giovanna le fue practicado un aborto en su casa al tener complicaciones con el feto, y lo que encontró el médico fue algo espantoso, un híbrido entre humano y otra raza. Se grabó todo el proceso. Las imágenes son fuertes. Se encontró una especie de placenta donde dentro se encontraba el producto, con características humanas. Se observan 2 extremidades superiores y 2 inferiores, el torso, pero la cara parece más a la raza que la está abduciendo.
Un aborto, con una malformación. Era un monstruo.